First of all, again, sorry for all this disaster, but finally we are here, and we have some changes in the program. First, Vera Durschnabel has cancelled her talk. She had a car accident, but it's not so bad. I'm sorry, just it's from organizers. Алло? Мы начали. Вы послали эту ссылку? Маша вам прислала ссылку. Маша Каспина. В Фейсбуке посмотрите. У вас есть Фейсбук? Это сложно, у меня он не связан с... Сейчас попробую. One moment, people. I'm sorry. Just some other people try to join us. Just 2 minutes. Okay, we're going on. So, and another change in the program that Gaby Abou Samra will talk later, closer to the end, before Natalia Sidorenko. We don't have time for any other introductions, and I'm giving the word to James Nathan Ford. Please, James.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Not the big. So the party, the PowerPoint. You can see it. Oh.
Yes, we see your presentation.
Okay. The title of my lecture is "The Evil Eye in the Syriac Magic Bowls." Only 2 Syriac bowls directed specifically against the evil eye have been published to date, namely BLMJ 70 by Nave and Shaked 1993 and MS 1928-54 by Shaked 2000. Both bowls carry essentially the same basic spell against the evil eye and appear to have been written by a Christian practitioner or possibly practitioners as they make appeal to the power of Christ. Today, I will focus on a third bowl in the Yesselson family collection, JIB 27. It was written by a different hand than that or those of the previously published Syriac evil eye bowls and carries a different but thematically related spell. The new bowl was also likely written by a Christian practitioner as it conjures the evil eye in the name of Hadu. He is one, a divine epithet based on the Beshita to Deuteronomy 6, verse 4. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. David and Yemima Yesselson for permission to study this bowl. I would also like to thank Professor Shaul Shaked for permission to quote from unpublished bowls in the Skoyan collection. Photographs of the Skoyan bowls are used courtesy of Matthew Morgenstern. As can be seen in the photograph, JIB 27 is written in the Manichaean script. The writing begins outside the central design and spirals towards the edge. On the outside of the bowl, perpendicular to the rim, is a label indicating the purpose of the incantation. The label reads Da'ina, for the eye. The word Aina, eye, without any attribute, here refers to the magical evil eye. There can be no mistake about this, as the usual appellation Aina Bishta, literally evil eye, appears repeatedly in the body of the incantation. The label Da'ina for the evil eye, or for the eye, is identical to the label Da'ina in the Jewish magic bowl MS 2053/97. Here you have Dalet, Yud, Nun, and a poorly preserved Aleph in a circle. It's on the outside of the bowl in the same way.
Morgenstern, Gaby, הוא מרצה עכשיו.
Both are exact parallels of Shainim, of the eye, in the colophon of an Akkadian incantation against the evil eye. Number 2.
כן.
Shiptum Shainim,
מנת האנגלית של ג'יימס, בסדר.
incantation against the eye. The and of Lil Aini for the eye in the title of an Arabic evil eye spell. Faidatun Ukhra Lil Aini, another remedy for the eye. The technical term Aina, eye, referring to the evil eye, also appears in the title of a late Syriac incantation. Number 4, for cattle, so that the eye, Aina, does not attack it. The incantation itself begins with a long introduction, lines 1 to 7a, which enumerates the various people and possessions.
I'm sorry, James, just
Yeah?
we have a problem with sounds of other people. I turn out the whole sound and you turn yourself, okay?
Okay.
Okay, and now you turn your sound.
Okay.
Hmm?
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. The incantation itself begins with a long introduction, lines 1 to 7a, which enumerates the various people and possessions to be protected. The evil eye is mentioned together with other demonic forces as follows. The text reads, this amulet and subdual and charm and sealing and protection is designated for the sealing and for the protection of this Haskil, son of Emi. Subdued and sealed and doubly sealed is this house of Haskil, son of Emi. And sealed is his wife, somebody, daughter of Miriai, and sealed is Kuso, and sealed is Ravia, and sealed are their sons and his daughters, and his sustenance, and his goats, and his livestock, and his cattle, and his lambs, and his kids, and his pig or pigs, and his chickens, and his hired servants, and his watchmen, and all that is in his house, this house. They are sealed and doubly sealed, and fortified from demons, and from devs, and from the evil eye that lies. In line 3, the name of the beneficiary appears. It's called Haskil. He bears a typical Iraqi Jewish name, Haskel or Heskel. It derives from the biblical name Yechezkel, Ezekiel. The family may thus conceivably be Jewish, despite the reference to his pig or pigs in line 6. In Jewish Neo-Aramaic, by the way, one finds the hypochoristic form Hasko, Ezekiel. Lines 6 to 7 read, Aina Bishta Demeshtakira, the evil eye that lies. The dishonesty of the evil eye is expressed in a late Syriac incantation by the adjective nechilta, deceitful, number 5. And the evil and envious and deceitful eye, Aina Bishta wa Hasemta wa nechilta, of evil human beings. Similarly, in the Mandaic evil eye incantation series, Shafta de Pishra de Aine, number 6, flee and be scared away evil and something and even envious and something and deceitful eye that deceives, to Nachilti de Nachla, on land and in water. For the semantic relationship between the Meshtakira that lies and Nechilta or Nachilti, deceitful, compare the Targum Psalms 120 verse 2, O Lord, save my soul from lying lips, misifwatha de shikra, and from the wily tongue, lishana nechilta. The main spell begins with the conjuration of the evil eye, which calls for its blinding and the striking of its face, lines 7b to 8a. It reads, may the eye be blinded, and may its face be beaten, and may it not harm its fellows. Line 7 reads, Teth awar aina, may the eye be blinded. The same verb appears in the thematically related passages in BLMJ 70 and MS 1928/54 with loss of the pharyngeal consonant as frequently in Babylonian Syriac. Number 8. Tith awar wa tith mache aina bishta dehi machathe leyoya bar rashnenduch. May the evil eye that smote Yoya bar Rashwan, son of Rashnenduch, be blinded and smitten. Although the verb to blind is not explicitly used, the evil eye is essentially punished with blinding in Shafta de Pishcha de Aine. Number 9. May a raven take it and ascend to the top of a palm tree and skewer it on a hard palm thorn. The same pair of verbs as in BLM J70 in reverse order appear with respect to the eyes of a demon in a Mandaic magic bowl. Number 10. Muhya al-aina wa aina awwa. Smite her on her eyes and blind her eyes. Line 7, we find Wanetztalaf partsufa, and may its face be beaten. The form of the verb netztalaf is anomalous. The scribe mistakenly wrote the tau of the stem before the sode and then correctly wrote the partially assimilated and metaphysized teth after the sode. He possibly initially intended to write a different verb, such as nethmache, may it be smitten, as in BLMJ 70. The collocation of the verb salaf with partsufa, face, also appears in a Jewish magic bowl in the context of a hostile act of a demon against its victim. Number 11. The spirit shuts up her mouth, beats her face, salva with bet, partsufa, and confuses her tongue in her mouth. The reference to the face of the evil eye is an indication of anthropomorphizing. This motif has been discussed in detail in Ford 1998. Compare especially the reference to striking the cheek of the evil eye and temporarily blinding its eyes in the following Akkadian incantation. Number 12. Strike her cheek, maksama lesa, and turn her back. Fill her eyes with salt, fill her mouth with ashes. In later Syriac magic, the anthropomorphizing of the evil eye is apparent in the evil eye incantation anathema of the angel Gabriel and the accompanying illustration of the angel Gabriel impaling the evil eye. We see the angel on the horse, and he's impaling with the lance Aina Bishta, the evil eye, which has 2 eyes and hands and legs and face and hair. Lines 7 to 8 read, Wala nechte bechavre or havra, and may it not harm its fellows. The common verb hata, to harm, regularly takes the preposition bet. The spelling nun cheth teth for its standard nun cheth teth olaf, nechte, most likely represents sandy writing. In light of the context, the subject is certainly the feminine aina, ein. The anomalous masculine form of the verb would be due to the influence of the preceding masculine verb nestalaf, may it, the face of the eye, be beaten. Havre or havra, its fellows, would therefore refer to the victims of the evil eye. If our interpretation is correct, this passage corroborates the obscure reference to the ach, brother of the evil eye, as its victim in the Ugaritic evil eye incantation, RS 22.225. The text reads, it, the evil eye, saw its brother, how lovely he was. Its brother, how very seemly. Its brother is achaha, which corresponds to chavra. The spell now continues with a monologue in which the beneficiary speaks of his struggle against the evil eye, lines 8b to 10a. It shares some vocabulary with the corresponding dialogue in the two other Syriac evil eye bowls. The first part, lines 8b to 9a, consists of three parallel irreal conditional phrases, each beginning with the conditional particle elule elu, were it not, as follows. Were not my victory for my sake, the evil eye would have vanquished me. Were not my shutting for my sake, the evil eye would have shut me up. Were not my glare for my sake, the evil eye would have glared at me. The apodosis of the first two phrases are relatively straightforward and describe aggressive actions of the evil eye vis-a-vis its victim by means of the verbs zechatan, would have vanquished me, and sechartan, would have shut me up. The words zechuth, my victory, and sechurt, my shutting, in the protases appear to be verbal nouns corresponding to the verbs in the respective apodosis. The third parallel phrase, elule elu humarti, or humart alai, hamartan aina bishta, were it not my glare for my sake, the evil eye would have glared at me. This phrase contains the verb hamar. Cal translates the pa'al stem as to be red hot. But in the present context, I would propose the meaning to glare at. The cognate verbal noun humart in the protasis would mean my glare. This meaning of hamar is suggested by a Mandaic incantation in which the same verb refers to a pernicious action of the eye of a demonic egg. The text reads as follows, number 15. Why have you opened your mouth against me? Why do you plot in your heart against me? Why do you plot in your mind against me? Why do you glare at me, mehamret alai, with your teeth? This is a graphic error with your eyes. Why do you wink with your eyelids at me? Why do your legs run after me? Then they go through another series of responses with the same members of the body. Whence do I have a mouth that I can open against you? Whence do I have a heart that I can plot against you? Whence do I have a mind that I can plot against you? Whence do I have eyes that I can glare at you? Echmarbach. Whence do I have eyes, for eyelids, that I can blink at you and wink at you? Whence do I have legs that I can run after you? Then again, the same list of members of the body. And you have no mouth that you can open against me, and you have no heart in which you can plot against me, and you have no mind with which you can plot against me, and you have no eyes that you can glare at me, tichmara alai, and you have no eyelids that you can blink at me, and you have no legs that you can run after me. The text enumerates various body parts of the demon, along with actions typically effectuated by the said member. The verb hamar must therefore refer to some action of sight, as it is performed by the eye. Since the verb clearly has a negative connotation in both texts, a translation to glare or to gaze angrily seems appropriate. The glaring would be an expression of the anger and rage burning inside the master of the eye, thus the connection with the meaning to be red hot. The same verb appears in BLMJ 70, where it must have the same meaning, number 16. Why is it the evil eye glared at me, chemrath alai? Now then, it has glared at me, again, chemrath alai. The second half of the monologue, lines 9b to 10a, recounts the ultimate victory of the beneficiary over the evil eye. The beneficiary, in effect, succeeds in doing what the evil eye what the evil eye had intended to do to him, as follows. Now, since my victory is for my sake, I have vanquished the evil eye. Since my shutting is for my sake, I have shut up the evil eye. Since my glare is for my sake, I have glared at and subdued the evil eye. The spell concludes as follows, lines 10b to 13. In the name of he is one who subdued all and subjugated all, thus do I subdue the eye and the malicious glare and every evil one and his force. Subdued is the evil one and his force, and destroyed is the enemy and his force is overthrown. From Haskil, son of Emi, and from his house and from his wife, and from his sons and from his something, and from his goats and from his livestock, and from his oxen, and from his something, and from his horses. Subdued is the demon, and the rest of the text is illegible. The evil eye is conjured in the name of Hadu, he is one. The reading in line 11, Kaveshna la le'aina, I subdue the eye, is difficult. If we look at the close-up, you can see faint traces of a lamed here. Then you can see the ein, the a, the yud is here. Then we have a beth, and the olaf is very clear. The problem is that up here, first of all, it doesn't make any sense, la'aiba. Plus there's a line here, a stroke here above the beth. And apparently what happened is the scribe by mistake wrote le'aiba, I don't know why, and then he corrected it with a superlinear nun to le'aina, which is the expected reading. I subdue the eye. The second object of the same verb kaveshna, I subdue, is lehumarta zedanitha, and the malicious glare. The adjective zedanitha, malicious, is by far the most frequently attested attribute of the class of demon homarta, often translated amulet spirit. In the present context, however, the collocation with aina, eye, or evil eye, in this context, homarta surely has the same meaning as homart, my glare, earlier in the text. Compare the parallel pair, aina bishta, the evil eye, and maskita hasemtha, the envious gaze, in AO 17.824, and aina bishta wakatia hazia, the evil eye and the fixed gaze, in an early Syriac amulet published by Genu, Syriac 2. Lines 11 to 12 read, Wamasaf sane mamagar haile, and destroyed is the enemy and his force is overthrown. The same verbs appear in reverse order in the Havdalah de Rabbi Akiva with reference to the destruction of demonized witchcraft, number 19. And all evil sorceries shall turn back against their practitioner, and they shall be overthrown and come to an end. Nit magrun nisufun, and something against their master. That's it. Thank you very much.
Oh, James, thank you for your very interesting presentation. Any questions and comments? For my part, I was very happy to see a formula, which is, one moment, John, a formula which we have in Syriac texts. Aina hasamta, I mean this aina bishta and hasamta is repeated, and I think it is maybe inherited from this older tradition. John?
Yes, in terms of the reddened eye, am I wrong in thinking that some of the representations of the evil eye actually show a bloodshot eye, which of course has little rings of red through it? That might be sort of the visual image that's being considered here. What the glaring eye looks like, in other words.
Are you asking me?
Yes, yes.
I don't know. They don't mention in this case. There is a aina hamranitha, which may be bloodshot or eye, but on the other hand, it may be the glaring eye, in accordance with at least my understanding of the word hamar. They do have talked about the blue eye often in the late Syriac and Mandaic texts, but
Okay, yeah. The blue eye is standard. That the blue eye is a problem. I'm thinking about Greek actually representations of the evil eye, which often show it as bloodshot. And I was with those little red things going all the way through it. And what I was suggesting simply is I'm not disagreeing with you that it's an angry and glaring eye. That's not a problem. The interesting part for me is that the bloodshot eye is actually attempted to visually render the idea of the glaring eye.
That sounds
Okay.
fine with me.
Okay. Anyway, the other thing I just wanted to make a comment. I found particularly interesting the raven sticking the thing on top of the palm tree. There's a specific reference to that. That's a mythological reference actually in Mesopotamia of the raven. The Sumerian tradition of the flood narrative, where the raven comes out, was sent out and comes back, and it doesn't come back. But when they don't come back, it lands on a tree or a bush or something of that sort. I just thought that was interesting to see this little sort of myth theme kind of being incorporated into the evil eye network. That was quite fun for me coming from that point of view. Was there anything else? I think that's all. Oh yeah, the other thing that connects into other things I know about, the turning over, of course, is a standard sorcery material. But what's interesting is the evil eye. You sort of have this the brother, quote unquote, is sort of lover's language, and you have in the Ardent Lily, sort of, which is also a female, attacking men. That there's a love interest that's involved here. A sense of finding a lover or whatever, a companion. So I thought that was also interesting. In other words, the way these sort of things kind of feed on each other and overlap on each other, and you kind of use every weapon you've got, against the thing you're going after, and never mind that some of these things actually tie into other what would be other complexes, or could have been other complexes at one time. So that was all I wanted to say.
Any other questions, remarks? So I think we can proceed to next paper, which is mine. And James, please finish your presentation. Turn off your presentation. Oh, yes.
So he was James Nathan Ford.
Yes. Charms against the evil eye in the later Syriac tradition of written magic. At first, I have to tell that this is part of a great project, the inventory of Syriac charms, which we had started last year at the Higher School of Economics University in Moscow. And just a few days ago, our first publication has appeared, which you can Google, maybe not today, but a little later, Syriac Love Charms, which was published in the journal Scrinium. And the aim of this project is to compile a comprehensive list of individual charms or spells within the Syriac tradition of written charms, in order to grasp the whole scope of thematic and pragmatic variation within this tradition. By the Syriac tradition of charms, we understand in this project, we understand the corpus of texts in classical Syriac, known to us from the codices and scrolls or rotuli, dated from the 18th to 20th century. For some reasons, the core of these texts originate from the Eastern Syriac communities, located in southeastern Turkey, Western Iran, and northern Iraq. We have the tradition of Western charms, part of which are Garshuni manuscripts. but for some reasons they don't appear too much in the collections, and this part of this tradition is still to be explored. So we restrict ourselves with the Eastern Syriac texts. How old is the later tradition of Syriac charms? Why do I ask this question? Because we have some older texts. For example, we have the texts from Tufan, which were published by Erika Hunter. We have some not certainly dated texts in British Library. Recently, Natalia Smelova has communicated with me and told me that they are going to publish an amulet for curing difficult childbirth from Harahoto. It's from Mongolia. It's not far from Tufan, a little. And but the earliest manuscripts in this tradition I'm going to talk about are the long scroll or rotulus in the collection of Assad, which was published recently, and the collection must be housed in London. It is from 1706, and one little codex in the collection of Sado collection number 1, dated 1714. But I want to show you one manuscript which we have found in HMML collection in the Hill manuscript library collection. It is kept in the Luther Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota, and it is not the collection of charms, but it has one illustration which is typical for this tradition. It is the depiction of Rabban Hormizd killing. Actually, he has to kill the dog, the mad dog. But he in this picture he kills also some demon which we cannot read here. But what is important for us that it is the earliest attestation of this later tradition. It is the date is here, so it is 17th century. What do we understand by the individual charm in this project? It is a text with its specific function, content, and composition, which may be witnessed by a number of copies in various collections of charms. The problem of this research on the publication of the material, because is in that every other manuscript usually repeats itself. I mean, if we publish a new manuscript, sometimes most of these charms are already known, for example, from Golan's or from other publications. So I think at this point, it is not so useful to publish just another codices or scrolls, but it is better to find out which individual or separate or unique charms we have in this tradition. But it will be seen from the discussion what do we actually do. One typical case of this identification of charms is the case when we have a title of certain charm, but behind this title we have different charms. And the example is the charm spell binding the mouth of dogs. We have 5 texts, or maybe now even 6, because I added one more text here, with this title, Esara de Pume de Kalbe, binding the mouth of dogs. But behind this title, you can find either the charm which is based on the formula, make them still by that stone which was put upon the mouth of the tomb of the Redeemer, of our Redeemer, which was published by Golans and which we have find another manuscript. But recently we have discovered another charm which was not known from any publication. It is based on the historial of the Holy Family, Christ and the family meeting dogs on their way from Egypt. And baby Christ makes a spell on these dogs in this historial. And we have the first discovery was made in the manuscript from Petersburg, Institute for Oriental Manuscript. And another example of this historial we have from one of the manuscripts from Sadok collection. So in this research on the evil eye in the Syriac tradition, I tried to identify these individual charms with their own historiola of their own formulas and their own composition. And the result of this research are 4 types. But I have to tell that the 4th type is a sort of, it has some fluidity, it has some different variants, but still in the 4th type we have 2 manuscripts which attest the same type of chart. So the first type is historial Archangel Gabriel meets the evil eye. The second is Jesus meets the evil eye in Jerusalem. It was not known from the publications. And the historial of 7 accursed brothers, it was there in Golans. And the newly found charms without any historial, just with formulas. Here I give some abbreviations which I will use, but if you would like, I will explain them if there arise any questions. And the first historial of Gabriel meets the evil eye is attested in 30 manuscripts, which are available to us. I mean, we have their copies of their translations. And 4 manuscripts which has this history, has this title, but not available to us by photographs. All in all, we have right now something like 50 copies of different manuscripts, including scrolls and codices. And here is the text of this historial. The evil eye went forth from the stone of the rock, and the angel Gabriel met her. He said unto her, whither goest thou, daughter of destruction? She replied unto him, I am going to destroy men and women, boys and girls, the souls of cattle and the fowl of heaven. The angel Gabriel said unto her, you will not enter paradise, and you will not see the great God, the one who is surrounded by thousands upon thousands. By his name thou art bound by me, and I bind thee, O evil on the evil's eye, the Aina Hasamta, and the eye of seven evil, members, 7 evil neighbors, and so on and so on. What is bold here, I mean, this is the correction which was made by Anna Cherkashina in her thesis on the collection of Syriac charms. And here the translation differs from Golange, because Golange had, you didn't enter paradise and you didn't see the great God. So there is a philological discussion in the work of Anna, which is in Russian, but it will be, of course, it will be published either in this paper or in her general work on this unique collection of charms from Kazan. And I underlined here the phrase 7 evil neighbors. Just take notice. It will be important for the discussion which follows. First of all, it's important to note the variation in titles. We have the most popular title, Herma de Malacha Gabriel de Hashach Le'aina Bishta. Sometimes we have just short title, Sarah de Aina Bishta, or Herma de Aina Bishta, or some other variations of this. And these are most popular titles. And we have also Sarah de Aina Bishta Hasamta, or sometimes Hasomta, and one very rare title, Aina Bishta de Kul de la Matya le Baita le Kenyana le Aina le Ane. These are the titles. The idea is that you have different titles, but behind these different titles, they have the same charm, but the same historia. The textology of these charms is very interesting, but here I will speak only about one detail. First of all, we have the formula of that the evil eye is going out from some place. And it is going, Anabishta nefkat men kefa kshita de tarana. It's the fullest version. Sometimes they have men kefa kshita, just that, and sometimes men kefa de tarana, which are just variations of this fuller version. But we have two unique manuscripts, one from Golans and one from I will show it here. It is Congregation of Chaldean Daughters of Mary Immaculate from Iraq, from Ain Kava. It is available through HMML library, where we have a very rare formula, Nefkat men aina de leba, or men ainach de leba, which is very special, which means that the evil eye is going from the eye of the heart, which probably is connected to this envious emotional characteristic of these mythological creatures, so to say. We have many illustrations in this. I'm just giving here the few. One of them you saw in the James Nathan Ford's presentation, and the unique illustration is in the Codex Bay and Golans. It has only the eye. You see, it is absolutely unique. We don't have any other manuscript with this just depiction of the eye. The typical illustration is Angel Gabriel killing this evil eye, which is depicted as probably a woman or a figure, which has different orientation here. And my favorite orientation is from Shabbat Alai and other publication, which was published recently, where you have the evil eye upside down. And we have some other depictions like that from other charms. It is a sort of iconographic motive for these demons. And the next historia is Jesus meets the evil eye in Jerusalem. It was first discovered in the work of Anna Cherkashina. She published a big manuscript from Kazan. It is from 18th century, from like 30s of 18th century. And but it was also found, the work is dated 2012. Another specimen was found in Sado manuscript, and recently I have found the fuller and the better version of it in another Sado manuscript, which we call, it's a provisional title, Old Not Dated. We have one manuscript which is called New Not Dated, but this manuscript is apparently from the end of 18th or maybe beginning of 19th century. Our Lord was riding on a donkey through the streets of Jerusalem when the evil Empress I met him. The Lord told him, "Oh, her, where are you going, O daughter of destruction?" The evil eye replied to her, it's a mistake because the evil eye naturally is a woman. "I'm going to the chambers of the beautiful newlyweds. I will tear the bull from the yoke, the cow from her calf, the son from the shoulder of his mother." Our Lord answered her, "You are bound by me, and I bound you from the beer of the streets," and so on and so on. This is the core of this text. And here you see the photo of this fuller version of this rare charm from undated manuscript from the Sado collection in St. Petersburg. Here is the next historiola, which is very special. It has some different titles. Most of the titles are like Esara de Kenyana de la Matiale Aina Bishta, and one title is just short, Siaga de Kenyana, without any mention of Aina, of the eye. And the historiola is like that. We don't have time to read it the whole, but just notice that there is no mention of any evil eye in it. But we have evil eye in the title, and we have this mythological group of creatures or people, 7 evil or accursed brothers, who appear in the list of the spells against the evil eye. I just show you again this text from the Codex A, which is very popular. And here, in the list of different eyes, different evil eyes, we have the eye of 7 evil neighbors. So we have this very strange text, which doesn't have evil eye in it, but by some oblique indications, we understand that tradition digest it or consider it the spell against the evil eye. Of course, this mythology of 7 accursed brothers should be explored, but I don't have anything to tell about it right now. And the last type, which we have found, it has no historiola, and I have found two manuscripts which repeat almost verbatim this charm. Here is the translation: in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, in the name of the praised Trinity and the power of the venerable cross, I bind the evil eye. You are bound, O evil and the evil eye, the blue eye and the green eye and the reddish blue eye. And here follows the typical list of different kinds of eyes. For example, the eye of the father and eye of the mother, which I think I have found it in Mesopotamian tradition. Also, we have this formula that someone is protected from the eye of the mother, and I think Joan will comment on it. And here is the Syriac text, which you can see here. This specific formula that litayuta meshabachta, which it doesn't appear. This is already a indication which we have in other version, and then we have bechailech, that's desliva zgida, and so on and so on. We have another manuscript from Paris, I think, but it has no other counterparts. But it is also without any historiola. So this is all which I wanted to say, and it is more to say about the commentary on these charms, about the mythology which is behind it. But my purpose was to identify different types of charms. And at some moment we came to understanding but this is just the burning task which they must do in this research. And another indication that it is useful and it is needed is that we have found out that David Calabro, who is with us today from HMML institution, is working just on the same task. He's also trying to identify these types of charms. And we right now we are trying to find the way to collaborate, and we already collaborate in some respect, and we hope to come up with the exhaustive catalog of Syriac charms one day. Thank you for your attention. So John, maybe you will comment on this formula. Do we have in Mesopotamian tradition this the eye of the mother on the eye of the father?
Well, in principle, the thing is with evil eye is that it isn't necessarily malicious. It's something that that can happen involuntarily to people. And so, yes, close relatives, people you have connection with, it comes from admiring too much or being too fond of something. So it makes perfect sense that people who would be particularly fond of you or like you or find you attractive and dote over you, it's the love child that dies is essentially where that's coming from. Essentially, I've experienced this personally, actually. When I was young, I was traveling in Italy on a school group, and I wandered around the streets of Venice by myself, and there was an old woman that I encountered who spat on me. And the oddest thing was it was not hostile, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And then when I looked into the evil eye things, they talk about that the way you counter your own evil eye that you unintentionally put on somebody by admiring them. She obviously thought I was a very attractive young lady. Yeah. And she spat on me to take away the evil that she had just put on me by having that thought. And that's why it came out to me that I registered it not as a hostile act at all, because it wasn't hostile. It was just an interesting thing. But yeah, that is one of the things of the evil eye. So I'm not surprised to see it ethnographically. This makes perfect sense. In terms of other sort of general comments from Mesopotamia, the seven is that there's a possible sort of, shall we say, backstory to them. There are a group of somewhere between the gods with stars who have very beneficent things and evil demons that are the seven, literally. The Semitic. Yes. And they accompany the god of plague, for summer plagues.
Thank you for this.
And so that seems likely to be, somewhere in the background behind year seven. The other thing I would suggest is for the story about the historiola about on the way to Egypt.
About the dogs.
But dogs, check out the infancy gospels. Because that is exactly the type of story that you get in infancy gospels. And there's at least one other infancy gospel story that specifically involves things that happened on the way to Egypt.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I broke the rules of reglement. I just asked Joan, is any other? But I was expecting some comments. So please, any other comments on this very interesting Syriac text? If no comments, we can go on to our next. I'm sorry, I have to stop my presentation. To our next speaker, Matthew Morgenstern. Matthew, are you here? One moment.
Do you see me? I'm just trying to get the PowerPoint.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, give me a moment because I'm having some technical problems getting the PowerPoint to share, and then I'll be with you. Okay, I think I put this here, and then I do share screen.
Oh yes, please remove this dreadful eye.
Oh, hang on. I have to find where the PowerPoint. Here you go. Do you see the PowerPoint now?
It's going.
Okay, great. So I can. It says my screen sharing is paused. Do you see it?
Not yet, but it should appear.
I don't resume.
It says
share.
that you started it.
You see it now?
No, yes, yes.
You see the
We see,
eye,
yes.
the dreadful eye that you wanted me to get rid of?
Yes, it revolves.
I should have told you. You asked me to get rid of the eye, so you got it twice. Okay. Okay, I'm going to try and start now. Okay. Oh, sorry. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Mandaean Mandaean spells against the evil eye, and discuss the principles and sources that underline the new edition that I've prepared for the Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon. I'll speak a little bit more about that edition as we go through. The first thing we'll discuss is the sources. To date, most of what has been published about the Shaft the Pishtar the Aini, the Mandaic spells against the evil eye, is based upon the work of Ethel Stefana Drower, who in the 1930s collected manuscripts in Baghdad. Drower's first publication of a Mandaic text was in fact this very text, the Shaft the Pishtar the Aini, which she published in 1937. Unfortunately, the collected scholarly papers of Drower don't deal with this early period. The earliest text that's discussed, the earliest letters that are reproduced in this volume date from 1938, a year after Drower completed her work. However, in another book, Yoram Buckley has published Drower's own hand lists of her manuscripts. And under DC-21, the source that served as the basis of Drower's edition, she wrote that she had received it copied by Sheikh Faraj in December 1935. The same date is written in English on the manuscript. His roll is dated 1250, transliterated and translated in MS volume something or other. These volumes are now buried in Maria Matzur's basement, and was published by her in JRAS 1931. I don't know what date this hand list is from. What Buckley adds is that Drower herself had written on this, "I find much to correct in this translation now." In a published account of Mandaic literature, published by Drower in 1951, simply called something like Mandaic Literature, Drower also similarly notes, "My first essay in translation was published with the transliteration in JRAS. It was an incantation against the evil eye. I could now, with access to better copies and more Mandaic, improve the translation." So Drower was aware of the shortcomings of her own edition. It's not that she thought it was perfect. It was her first trip into editing Mandaic texts. We can see that Drower was aware of her own errors by the corrections which she entered in citations in the Mandaic dictionary. For example, in the 1937 edition, we read Thasa de Pashtra wa Nafqa min Dibni. The translation of this text is basically not a translation. She writes, "and like something or other, which is loosened and goes forth from its something or other," and she didn't know how to translate it. In the footnotes, Drower writes that Thartha, according to a priest, is a silkworm, but this is Tulitha, and that Dibna, that the priest thought it was cocoon, that Nerdika translated as a sheepfold, and another priest had told her that it was a reed enclosure for sheep. So Drower was asking native informants about the meaning of the words, and she didn't always get the answers that she required. However, by the time we get to the published Mandaic Dictionary of 1963, we see that the same text is cited with the correct translation, like a sheep which is loosed and comes forth from its fold. So in this case, the Mandaic Dictionary has introduced corrections to the original edition of Drower. Buckley also adds a note to her account of her publication of Drau's Handlist, in which she notes that the correct date on the manuscript is not 1250, but is in fact 1270, 1853. And Buckley is correct. That's the date that is written on DC 21. However, it's worth pointing out that although the manuscript is dated to 1270, we know it wasn't copied in 1270. We know that it was copied in 1935. In other words, it's dated to 1853 BCE. It's copied in 1935 BCE. And in this case, as in other cases, as we shall shortly see, late Mandaic copyists, when they were asked to reproduce a manuscript, would sometimes simply reproduce it, including the original date of copying. They wouldn't update the dates that are recorded in their sources. And this is one case where we know clearly when it was copied and we have the date of the source. So if we take what Drau had at her disposal, she had DC 21, which is the manuscript she published, copied in 1935 from a manuscript from 1853 to 4, and DC Drau collection 29, 1329 to 1911. In 1998, work was done on these texts until in 1998, James Ford published his study of Evil Eye text from Ugarit, and he made wide use of Drau's 1937 edition and corrected several of its interpretations. But again, at the time, the material available to him was Drau's edition. In a year later, a scholar by name of Tarelko, I believe was, where was from? Estonian, perhaps. He unfortunately left the field, published an article in which he discussed going to produce a new edition of the text, and he noted that Drau's 1937 edition, 1938 edition contains many scribal errors and many transcription errors. We'll come back to this later. Unfortunately, Tarelko himself mentions that he didn't have access to the other sources that Drau used, which were DC 29 and a copy of the text in the possession of Père Anastase de Saint-Méry. About 10, 11 years ago, I started gathering materials for a complete critical edition of Mandaic literature and a critical edition of Mandaic literature, digitally tagged editions that would form the basis of a new Mandaic dictionary. And in my study of these texts and my attempt to prepare digital editions of them, I also had reason to look at the Shafter Zapisha Aini and was able to correct further texts, further passages which have been misinterpreted both by Drau and in the Mandaic dictionary. I published a few of these in the article I've just shown you, where lengthy passages were misunderstood by Drau and those mistakes entered the Mandaic dictionary. Around 9 years ago, while I was on sabbatical in Berlin, I was able to locate another manuscript of the Shafter Zapisha Aini that was mentioned in Drau's correspondence, the published correspondence, but had been lost after the Second World War. Drau actually visited Berlin a week after the invasion of Poland, I believe it was. And she saw these manuscripts, she noted some of their contents, and then the manuscripts disappeared. And in 2012, I was able to locate the edition and request that it be photographed. So the photograph that you now can get for free is because I paid for it. Where did this manuscript come from that is now in Berlin? Our trek takes us to Paris in 1904, where de Morgan published his editions of Études linguistiques, Texte Mandaic. De Morgan claimed that he had received his manuscripts, which are now in Paris in the Bibliothèque Nationale, directly from Mandaeans, but he couldn't disclose his sources because this would put in mortal danger his Mandaean informants. However, since de Morgan was not really able to read the manuscripts he published, he didn't realize that one of the texts, which is a letter, was written to Patri Anastase. In the 1980s, Rudolf Matsuch noted that this Patri Anastase is presumably Père Anastase de Saint-Marie, who had connections with the Mandaean community in Baghdad. And in 2013, I was able to locate this letter in the archives in Halle, a letter by Père Anastase to Mark Lidzbarski, in which he says quite explicitly that all the manuscripts that were sent to London, Paris, and Berlin over the past 15 years, in other words, since 1898, came from him, including those published by de Morgan. So it seems extremely likely that the text that is in Berlin now was from Père Anastase's collection. And indeed, textually, it stands very close, although not identical, to the citations brought under PA in the Mandaic dictionary. Plus, so the evil eye should be on de Morgan for his lies. Plus, when we look at the ductus, the scribe, Père Anastase's scribe had an extremely unusual hand. It wasn't a regular Mandaean hand. He was a speaker of Neo-Mandaic, but he wasn't a trained priest, and he seems to have taught himself to write. And his handwriting is not the priestly hand, and we can see it's actually the same handwriting. I mean, I can recognize his handwriting immediately now when I see it, because his manuscripts are extremely clear. And therefore, we can say that although the Berlin manuscript is dated to 1231, 1816, it was almost certainly not copied at that time. But like Drauer's manuscript, it was copied at the end of the 19th or beginning of the 20th centuries when it was sent to Berlin. Perhaps it was even produced on demand as an attempted identical copy of its source. Now, the manuscript is very corrupt. It's not very good copy, but occasionally it has readings that are important. So we now have, for Drauer's one manuscript that she published, I now have 3 manuscripts at my disposal, but the story does not end there. Drauer acquired her manuscripts in Baghdad, but owing to the Gulf War and the oppression of Mandaeans in Iran over the past 30 years, there's been a massive migration of the Mandaean community to particularly countries in the West, and Australia. Now, this has been a disaster for the Mandaean community, but from my perspective, it made the Mandaeans suddenly accessible to me. And several years ago, I was able to visit Nijmegen in the Netherlands and meet with the possessor of the largest collection of Mandaean manuscripts in the world, Rabbi Rafi de Sabti, and by permission, photograph the entire collection. Amongst the treasures of this collection are 2 copies of the Sefer of the Pishra Aini. One, the earliest surviving Mandaic magic text on paper from the 17th century, but unfortunately it only covers the second half of the work from around line 400 in DC 29. The other is another paper copy, quite late, that stands very close to the textual tradition of DC 29. So I'm going to summarize the situation of the textual witnesses of this text now. We have one textual tradition, which is preserved in its entirety in DC 29 and preserved in half in Rabbi Rafid collection 3K. And this is one tradition. They share a lot of readings. The other textual tradition, which seems to be reasonably independent of it in some cases, is DC 21 and RRC 1E. Finally, we have another tradition, which is Berlin, which seems to be independent. It doesn't relate to both of them, but it's a very corrupt manuscript. In addition to these sources, we have some epigraphic sources. A few years ago, I don't remember when exactly, Miller Kessler identified that there was a list of evil eyes in one of the Mandaic lamellae from the British Museum collection, which is parallel to the text in the Shafter Pishtra that we know. And several years ago, James Ford was able to identify another text which contains another lengthy parallel, a significant parallel to the list of evil eye names. Unfortunately, both of these texts are simply lists of evil eye names and are a limited value to the reconstruction of the current recension that we have. However, I thought I would mention a few examples of where we can see how the text is developed. For the early Mandaic form Delibat, of the name of the god, the later traditions, including the earliest manuscript, reads De Libat. And this is what, in the case of the name of Nabu, we find in the early text Din Nabu, in the later texts also Din Nabu, but DC 29, which is the later version of that tradition, has already written Enbu. It's using the 19th century spelling. DC 21, interestingly enough, uses the 19th century spelling and then erases it. The scribe erases his own scribal error. The names of the evil eyes probably presented in the Lamella are Tait, Zait, Tzrait. Now these of course are meaningless words, but they're names of evil eyes. In the later recensions, in all the later recensions, there's Zihwat, Tehwat, and Sarahit. So in reconstructing this text, the importance of the early attestations is to prove that this is an ancient text. But in fact, they're of very limited value to me when I was producing a critical edition, because I have to produce a critical edition of the recension that we have. And so I regarded them as laying outside the remit of manuscripts that I would use for my critical edition, and they need to be published separately for their own value. Now, in some cases, the new texts confirm emendations that had already been proposed in the literature. In this particular passage, Begawe Waravitha, unfortunately, Dara didn't understand what Waravitha was. She said water flowed into it and spring herbage. She thought Ravitha was somehow spring herbage. James Ford correctly noted that for Waravitha, we should read Daravitha, of the sea. Drower's manuscripts both read Waravitha, so her addition was accurate, but the text was corrupt. And in this case, the wild card of MS Berlin actually preserves the correct reading. And it's very clear that the Wa, Vav Aleph, is a graphic error for the De of meaning of. So the correct reading, although I based my edition on DC 29 with variants from DC 21, in this case, I introduced the correct reading from the Berlin manuscript. Another more complicated example is this. In Drower's edition, we have this line, which Drower translated, was ashamed, as if cold, and be abased. That is indeed the reading of DC 21, but DC 29 contained an apparently incomprehensible reading, Achwat, Aq, and then on the next line, Ar, Sahun. Now, while preparing the edition for the Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon, I was searching for something, and I can't remember what I was searching for, and suddenly, oh, no, sorry, I'll come back. In the continuation of the text, we have in DC 29, Akar, and then it says, Utshus ubahut, and that is indeed what the DC 21 said, but here, DC 29 reads again, Akar, Sahun, as one word, ubahut. While the RRC1E, the manuscript that stands close to DC 21, it's the same tradition as DC 21, doesn't read Sahus, it reads Sahun. So Akar Sahun was actually common to both manuscript traditions. And here I come on to that bit about the CAL. In preparing this text for the CAL, I was searching for something, and suddenly I realized that we actually did have a parallel to this. I think I was searching for the meaning of the word Bahut, because in Mandaic text, Bahut clearly means to be gone. It presumably comes from the verb to be embarrassed, but it means to sort of run away, maybe from shame. Be shamed as in be gone. And my searches within the database of text that I put into the CAL, and we're now at the point where the data that we've already entered into the system is helping us to interpret texts. It's a great advantage to be able to search for parallel expressions, and many times we found that by those searches we're able to interpret the text that we're dealing with better, where our texts are difficult. So I suddenly realized that this text actually appears in a text published by Pognon, which reads Qar, Sahun, Ubihut. And here we have it in the hand copy by Pognon. This expression appears. So akar is from ein kufresh, be uprooted. Behut, as I said in Mandaic, often means to be ashamed, as in to run away. Sahon seems to mean to dissipate. It's not clear. I mentioned this to Abu Draham, Yoad Abu Draham, who's working with me on these texts, and he pointed out that, in fact, we also have these three roots appearing together in one of the manuscripts, in one of the unpublished bowls from the Martin Schoen collection. And so we can now quite clearly state that this is this expression, akar, sahan, and bahat are three verbs that appear together. And they were previously unidentified. Well, akar was known and bahat was known, but sahan was unknown in Mandaic, unidentified, even though it appeared in a text published right at the start of Mandaic epigraphy by Pognon. And in this case, it is RC1E which preserves the correct reading. I'd like to end with an example of where, by arranging the text not according to the lines of the manuscript, but rather according to the lines of the sense meaning, it's possible to have a better understanding of the structure of the text and then hence come to a better translation. Drower published this section, turn thee from the house and body of N, son of N. The date palm is uprooted from his garden, i.e. his sight is gone. And a fetter has fettered thee, and the reed mat, and the reed into the reed mat, something, 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 and rain beats down, or flail beats down, and the stone house crushes thee flat, a mud brick in the building, etc. There's no coherence here, and it's quite clear that Drower got lost while translating this text. By arranging it, first of all, it has to be said that there's a reading error here, as Terelko already noted, and I was told he's not Estonian, he's Belarusian. He already noted that it's not akruk, it is akruch. They uprooted you. This is a correct reading. But by arranging the text according to its meaning, I was able to come up with, I believe, a much more coherent translation. And you went against, presumably, the mothers. It's an irregular form, umamatha here. Umamatha min hadadi parshit, and you separated the mothers from each other. Akruch min baite upagre, they uprooted you from the body, from the house and body, the Yahya Ramzihram Bar Hawasimat of the scribe. And now we have what in Arabic we call maful al-mutlaq. Mikar zikla min bare, the uprooting of a palm tree from its plantation. Warigluch, mirgal kaina buria, and they tied you like the tying of a reed to a mat, a reed mat. Watiriuch, mitri beta min glala, and they smote you. They hit you like the hitting of an egg by a stone. And they subdued you like the subduing of a brick in its building. And here I think a word has fallen out. We have another variant reading. Tibuch abara baravitha. They sank you, they drowned you, and then it says led in the sea, which I assuming should be mitba abara baravitha. And a word has dropped out, I'm assuming, in all of the traditions. In conclusion, to date, the only available edition of these texts has been Drower's, which she herself acknowledged was in need of revision. The epigraphic texts prove the antiquity of the material, but are of limited value in producing an edition of the surviving recension, and therefore, as I said, I didn't incorporate them into my edition. For Drower's single textual witness, and we now have 5 significant sources, some more significant than others, but with certainly the use of 2 traditions and slightly earlier manuscripts for the second part greatly improved the edition of the text. And all of these texts are imperfect, which means that the only way to produce an edition of this text is to produce an eclectic edition. An eclectic edition. You have to use the available evidence. The text becomes coherent as soon as you combine the evidence of the 2 traditions. In most cases, I would say it's very apparent what the correct reading was. Occasionally, the 2 variants are of equal value. My digital edition presents my reconstruction of the text and is subject to improvement as new sources and interpretations come to light. as I said, the edition is available through the Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon. It's tagged. At the moment, it hasn't been translated, and I feel that perhaps what I need to do, I don't have the time to produce a full critical edition and a full commentary, but perhaps what would be helpful is if I were to produce a commentary, a translation with some notes that would explain how I've interpreted some of these passages. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Matthew, for this stunning presentation. Please, any comments on that?
No, it was all so amazing that nobody has anything to say.
For me, it was interesting that you have this dilbat, yes? We have found some reflection on it in Syriac, in the names of Lilith, in the Syriac charm of Avdisho. It was the point, actually it was a reconstruction of Anna, whom you know now, yes, Anna Cherkashina. But it is not exactly Dilbat, something like Darba or something like that. But I think it is also a reflection of this old Mesopotamian. It should be some Mesopotamian term, some old Mesopotamian term.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the trouble I have with dealing with this text is that it's I am not a specialist in eagle eye spells, and my project is really taking me in other directions. You know, I don't have time to do a full edition, otherwise I won't do the things I need.
I'm sorry, it has also the phrase like evil eye is going out from some place.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest for that you have a look at James's article, which is traced many of the themes, and it was interesting to hear your lecture because
Yes, thank you.
That James wrote about.
That's
as I said, I mean, as I said, I've tried to do a minimal and not evasively minimal, because my purpose of my project is not to edit evil eye spells, it's to produce working editions of the entire corpus of Mandaic literature. And we're talking about something like 500,000 words, if not more. There's a limited amount of time I was able to put into any one of these texts. But I do believe that by gathering as much textual evidence as possible and editing that textual evidence into something that I would call a working, eclectic, but working edition, I hope I've provided a basis that other people like you and like James and like Joanne, other people can come along and contribute more to the interpretation of the text. And as I said, I deliberately organized it by sense unit and by parallelism rather than by manuscript lines, because I don't think the manuscript lines have any value. In this case, I think that when you look at it in the poetry, it greatly increases your understanding of how the text is functioning. And as I said, I'm certain that more textual evidence will come to light, either from Syriac or from Mandaic or from the Manichaean bowls, and we'll have a better understanding of these texts. But I do believe that with the combined efforts of finding the manuscripts and reading the studies by James and my own interpretations, I hope have improved the understanding of these texts in certain places, that we now have an edition that is worthy of serving as a basis for the future scholarship, because Drower's edition was really not able to perform that function. Grossly
thank you for this great work, which is very helpful for us. We have another remark from John. John, please.
I may be able to help on your mystery verb. There is an Akkadian. It's with an it's with an S instead of a tzaddik, but it's sahanu, and it's equally problematic. But the context is in doing violence to something. It's something you do with swords and so forth. So if that helps at all, just as a suggestion, it's in the CAD under, it's CADS under Sahanu.
It could be. I mean, it's very mysterious. I mean, we only know it from this context. We only know this from this this great tripartite expression, which was only discovered a few weeks ago. So
Well,
It was like, so I don't know. I don't have the answer. I just found just suddenly I realized that what this very bizarre copying was, and how the words are to be divided up. And then we found the parallels, and then it became very clear that this is what it is. I mean, this is the exciting thing. I was looking at yesterday at the citations of Mandaic articles, and they're basically zero. So the kind of the downside of working on Mandaic is that nobody's reading your articles. The upside of working on Mandaic is that every time you work, you find new exciting things. So it's very much of a personal thing. You sit in your house and get excited and dance around the room, and then nobody cites what you say. You have to be willing to enjoy your own work to do this.
it's a
The only person citing them is myself. So, James.
Okay, people, we have to go on. I'm sorry. Yeah. Our next speaker is Gaby Abou Samra. Gaby, do you have presentation?
Hello, Alex.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. I will speak about the Christian and Jewish features in the Syriac magic bowls. In the late Sassanid period till the Islamic conquest, one finds a well-developed magical tradition written in Christian Aramaic dialects. The extant texts were mainly written on earthenware bowls. The Syriac magic bowls are referred to by their scribes as koso, bowl, kum'o, amulet, rozo, mystery, or sometimes, and ktibo, read. They are written in a form of Syriac language in 3 different scripts, Strangelo, Sirto, and Manichaean. The number of published bowls now stands at around 60. Morigi published 49 Syriac bowls in his corpus of Syriac incantation bowls, henceforth CSIB. 4 Syriac bowls published by Shaked in 2000 and were not included in the study of Morigi. Since the appearance of this corpus, 1 new bowl was published by myself in 2016 and 6 bowls by James Nathan Ford in 2018. Many show distinctly Jewish and Christian features. In the following, I will present the most important elements referring to these published bowls. The first part, I will present the Jewish features. The first feature is the tetragram. Really, we don't find the complete word Yud, He, Waw, He, but abbreviation like Yud, Aleph, He, Yud, He, Waw, or Yud, Aleph, Waw. In one text published by Ford, we have this expression, Shun, Ehye, Ubehye. I don't know if we can consider this word as tetragram. Second,
Gaby, I'm sorry. You don't have any presentation to show, yes?
Yes, I will show it later.
I'm sorry.
No, for the Jewish part, no, but for the Christian part, yes.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Second, liturgical and psalmodic formulae. We have many psalmodic formulae like Amin, Amin, Selah, or sometimes Hallelujah, and sometimes only the word Amin, Amen. We find the well-known verse from Isaiah chapter 6, verse 3, Shum Kadosh, Kadosh Sabaoth, in the name of Holy, Holy, Holy Sabaoth, published once by a text by Ford also. Third, the angel names and biblical verses. The names Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, and other angels from the Jewish tradition like Yehubi'il, Barki'il, Asri'il, etc. are repeated in the Syriac bowls. The sentence Malachid Uddin Re'wotehed Morio echoes two verses 20 and 21 of Psalm 103, according to the Peshitta translation. Barech el Morio Malachau dam Sent Hailo Uddin Fugdonau. Barech el Morio Kulhun Hailawotim Shamshonau Uddin Sibione. Bless the Lord, all his angels, creatures of might who do his word of command. Uddin Fugdonau. Bless the Lord, all his forces, his servants that do his will. Uddin Sibione. Fourth, Jewish personalities. The most used name or personality is Rabbi Joshua Bar Perahia in a repeated sentence. Ki hu diatib Rabbi Yeshua Bar Perahia ukateb alayhun distbira khulhun shide udaywe satane ulilyawoto ulo tobe. Rabbi Joshua Bar Perachia said and wrote against them a bill of divorce against all of them, demons, evils, satans, and liliths, and no good ones. In different texts, we find this formula. This formula clearly refers to Jewish legal practice, and this sentence accounts for the fact that the Syriac text had a Jewish Babylonian Aramaic source. The expression Istbira, bill of the divorce, is an Iranian loan word. The Jewish Aramaic parallels at this point have to have the word Geta or Gita. Another name used in such document is Salmon in one text also published by James Ford. We have this formula, Htim Mahtim, Baited Bar Gelal, Bar Dadai, B'izqat Shlemon, Malko Bar Dawid. Sealed and double sealed is the house of Bar Gelal, son of Dadai, with the signet ring of King Solomon, son of David. Fifth, Jewish Babylonian Aramaic expressions. The most common expression in the Syriac bowls is Pshum Ot Mim Dalet Gimel Ot Otot Otot Min Gau Otot Otot Shmo Gilyon Min Gau Gilyona. In the name of the sign of Mim Dalet Gimel, the sign of the signs, signs out of signs, the signs of the name, the blank space out the blank space. The whole sequence is alone a translation, sure, with some slips, of Hebrew passages quoted in the parallel Jewish Aramaic text, number CBS 9010, published by Montgomery, Pshum Ot Metoch Ot, Otiot Metoch Otiot, Ushem Metoch Hashemot, Unikab Metoch HaGiul. We find an analogous sequence in another Aramaic text published by Maria Goreya in 2001 in the one of volume of Semitic. The second part is the Christian features. Here I will show you the you can see this.
Yes.
Okay. The sign of the cross. The most visible Christian iconographic element in the magic bowls is the cross. It appears in various forms and in different places in the incantation text. As you can see, it appears inserted in the text as a series of 7 crosses designed usually as the sign of plus, or in different numbers, 1 cross, 3 crosses. As you can see here, we have 3 crosses. Here we have 1 cross in the text and 1 cross in the petal motif. Also, we find it in the end of the text as 2 crosses. In the center of the bowls, there are different forms of crosses enclosed by a circle or petal motif. The crosses divide the enclosed space into 4 quarters, which often contain various types of marking. For example, dots. You can see the dots in the 4 quarter, or crosses in the quarter. Or sometimes in the quarter we can find letters, probably Aleph, Ain, Gimel, probably. Designs resembling Maltese crosses can also be adduced. The text is written in 4 in the next one. Here we find the text written in 4 cartouches, approximating the shape of a Maltese cross. Furthermore, in 1 cartouche, there are 3 small circles, each divided into 4 segments by a cross, as you can see here. Moreover, the word slibo, the cross itself, is used to protect people and possessions. حتمو خبرو بخرو دا سليبو زخويو محتمو بدمو دياتيك إحدار. By your seal, firstborn son of your victorious cross, I am sealed by the blood of your covenant. It's unpublished bowl. Here, all the unpublished bowl, I will thank my friend James Nathanford to give me access to this unpublished bowl. Thank you, James. Another bowl refers to the glory cross, محتيم ومحتيم بيته هونو بإين ومين وبقوتي دسليبو دنهرو العلام علمين. Sealed and doubly sealed is this house by yes and amen, and by the sign of the cross of light forever and ever. Another feature is the name of Jesus and his epithets. In the Syriac magic bowls, references are made to several of epithets of Jesus. We have the epithet Osio, healer, is repeated in various bowls, invoking Jesus to heal the client. Hailod Yeshua Osio, by the power of Jesus the healer. Also, Pshumorio, Rabo, Takifo, Kadisho, Ubashme, Yeshua Osio, in the name of the great, the mighty, the holy Lord, and in the name of Jesus, the physician, son of life. The epithets Osio, Umasiono Hayo, physician and living healer, in CSIB 49 is easily identified with Jesus, whose hands are full of mercies and supplied with grace. The second title is Mshiach, Christ. By his power, the patient will arise and be held. Some Jewish bowls, published or unpublished, refer also to Jesus as Christ. In Musayyif 155, line 12, we find Est Christos, where Levine identified as Christos as Christ. There are also two unpublished parallels where instead of Est Christos, we find Isos Christus, Jesus Christ. The epithet Morio, Lord, is the most important title of the Christ in the New Testament. The same epithet is mentioned in Davidovich poem number 8. Hailoch Moran Yeshua Mshiho, Moritan Tub Miryei. By your power, our Lord Jesus, also Our Lady Miriam. Here, the mention of Our Lady Mary is remarkable. It is the first time we find it in such document from this period. It will be abundantly attested in the late Syriac Christian paper amulets. The epithet Bro Bukhro, firstborn son, appears in the Syriac magic bowl. Putmoch Bro Bukhro, by your seal, firstborn son, in Jonathan Nathan Ford, number 2218. It derives from the use of Bukhro, firstborn, with reference to Jesus in the New Testament. The term Amen, appears in CSIB 2. On the right side of the chest of a standing human figure drawn parallel to the rim. On the left side, it is written El Shaddai, as you can see here. The magic word Amin frequently serves to close spell units in the Syriac magic bowls. Here, however, in the right side, it appears outside of the framework of the spell, in collocation with the divine epithet El Shaddai, and maybe thus, I say maybe, possibly be an allusion to the title of the Christ in the book, in New Testament, the book of the Revelation, chapter 3, verse 14. It's clearly in this book, in this verse, a title of Jesus, where we can read clearly, Jesus is the Amen. The Trinitarian formula, the Christian Trinitarian formula, Shem Abou, Abro, Ruhot Kucho, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, is used repeatedly in this kind of magic bowls, Syriac magic bowls. Biblical quotations. The main bowl containing a clear New Testament text is CSIB 49, published first by myself, then republished and corrected by Sanzo and Korsvold. The verses are scattered quotation from the Epistle of St. Paul to the Ephesians, chapter 6, verses 10 to 17. The text began here and finish here, begin in the line 4 and finish in the line 6. The text says, أعطيف إنون زينيك ألوهوي من يمين هون واسم الهون سيم بريشيهون هن وروتو حاي بهنت بطال حيلت بيشو وتويوبو دوانجوليون ديتاي دشلومو نهوي بدموت شورو معلو من خول جراو بيشو. The translation, dress them of your divine armor in order that they will be on their right and left sides, put on their heads helmets of life, by means of which is abolished the strength of evil, and the preparation of the gospel, which is of peace. May it be in the form of a wall raising against all darts of evil. So it's the only clear New Testament Christian Syriac text in the magic box. We have also some liturgical formula as من هوش وعدام والغلام غلمين أمين, from now and forever and ever. We have also the expression amin or in amin, yes and amen. We find once the word yoye, verily, a liturgical expression that is still used today in the Syriac liturgy. Christian client names. Several names in the magic bowls seem to be explicitly Christian. In the bowl CSIB 6, the husband Meher Hormuz has a Zoroastrian name, but the wife is matronymic Batsadeh, daughter of martyrs, is Christian. The masculine equivalent is Barsada, son of a martyr, appears in CSIB 13. The personal name Marcion in CSIB 45 recalls the name of the founder of the Christian heresy, Marcionism, during the 2nd century, is also likely Christian. The resurrection. Nave and Chaked noted the reference to the resurrection of Christ in the text CSIB 27, Mit Aqimet Uzachil Yawi'a, a dead man I raised, and he granted victory to Yawi'a. I conclude, with the exception of a small number of bowls, the main spell units of the Syriac magic text from the Sassanid period show considerable similarity to those of religious traditions and are not distinctively Christian. They tend to mention many of the same divine epithets, angels, demons, and illnesses, and use similar formulaic expressions and magical motifs. In not a few cases, Jewish Babylonian Aramaic or Mandaic parallels of the entire spell are extant. An increasing number of bowls, however, show Christian features, which indicate that the practitioner who prepared the incantation was a Christian, whatever the ultimate origin of the main text. Thank you.
Thank you for your paper. It is always interesting to follow this mixture of traditions in this text. I remember a very interesting paper by James Ford about Jesus in Hebrew Bible, in Hebrew bowls, which he read in Paris, and sometimes they are just striking. I invite people to comment. Anybody has any comments or questions to Gaby? I just have to say that it was not quite easy to follow without these phrases, without these formulas which you were talking about. It would be much better if they were in the presentation. So thank you for this paper. Now, at this point, we are finishing this part which is dedicated to dealing with Aramaic magic, and I have to explain that that was the tradition of this session in the Sefer conference that we have speakers talking about Aramaic magic, but we have another paper on absolutely unrelated topic about the grammar of Biblical Hebrew. And I would like to introduce Natalia Sidorenko from St. Petersburg, who has graduated from St. Petersburg University. And I think it is her first appearance at the international conference. We discussed this topic together in Ostrog. Some people know that we had some Semitic school in Ostrog. And the first task was to understand how concessive clauses are expressed in Aramaic. But finally, because we were working with Targums, Natalia realized that we have to understand what are the concessive clauses in the book of Genesis. So Natalia, please start. If you have your presentation, please start it right now.
Okay. Am I sharing?
Yes, yes, we see your presentation. Yeah.
Okay, great. So my topic is concessive clause in the Hebrew text of the book of Genesis, and we had to describe and classify the concessive constructions in the Hebrew text of the book of Genesis, and this meant that we had to find them in the text first, and also analyze grammatically and semantically. So there was a task that consisted of several steps. Okay, a bit about concessivity. It is a complex semantic notion because concessive constructions can be viewed both as a reverse causal and as a case of adversative clauses. Also, there is a type of conditionals that is called concessive conditionals, but in their structure, they are very close to conditionals, so we are not discussing them now. Task number one was to find concessive constructions in the text of the book of Genesis. Such languages as Russian and English have specific markers of concessivity. And in English, those are conjunctions, though and although. But Biblical Hebrew does not have those, and we had to rely mainly on semantic and context and try to find some formal semantic markers. All in all, we found 27 relevant examples. And here I should note that unfortunately, Hebrew grammars were of limited use because mostly they have examples from the prophets and the book of Psalms and not the Torah. And different translations, Russian and English, were of some help. And this is the classification with which I came about.
Natalia, I'm sorry, maybe you need to move the presentation because we see only the first page.
I don't know what's the problem.
You have to scroll it somehow. Just clicking. Yes, yes, like that. Yeah, something.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was. You weren't seeing
Yes,
what
yes,
I'm
it's okay.
showing.
Mhm.
Okay. Mm. Okay, back to the presentation. And the first thing that I should say that it is about relative position of the principal and subordinate clause. Mostly, as you can see, subordinate clause precedes principal clause, and this is the default order in which these clauses go, and most of the languages of the world do it that way. But it is notable that the reverse order, there are some examples of the reverse order when the principal clause precedes the subordinate clause, and this is not the case for some languages, and it is notable that Hebrew language has this order. But there were no examples of the third option when the subordinate clause is inserted between the two parts of the principal clause. And this table shows temporal correlation and the number of examples for each of the cases, and what verb forms and what way of what are the ways of linking of the clauses. And now I will switch to the examples of each of these cases. The first variant has the most examples, and also variant A, which has vital and perfect forms in the subordinate and principal clauses, is not in the direct speech, and the rest of examples are in the direct speech. And there are also two other options. You can see the examples. I think I won't be reading them out, just show what they are. And two other variants when the secondary subordinate clause action follows principal clause action, and we have infinitivus constructus and perfect. And mostly a position has to be derived from the context. And this is the difficulty. The third variant, when the subordinate clause describes the state of things, have a nominal clause there, and this is no surprise. And in the fourth variant, when we have future actions, we have two imperfects, again no surprise. And the fifth variant, when the principal clause and subordinate clause are reversed, we have perfect and in principal clause and nominal clause as a subordinate clause. This was a short overview of these things, and my conclusions were that identify some semantic indicators. These were either verbs with opposing meanings, and in one case antonyms, good and evil, but it is not a frequent case. Also were identified the most frequent polysemantic markers of concessivity, Those were conjunctions, key and where. Well, this is important because grammars show linkings with im, gam, ki, and al, and we don't have those in the book of Genesis, not in one case. And also was described this situation when the principal clause precedes the secondary clause, and this is interesting because this is not the case with all of the languages. And was described this temporal correlation of the secondary and the principal clauses, and there wasn't anything very surprising, but maybe it is a start to looking at a larger set of examples. That's all with me.
Oh, thank you very much. Just want to make, can you return your presentation?
Yes.
I just wanted to to comment on, can you return one slide back, for example? Yes, and we have often this phrase, nominal opposition is derived from the context. And I think the most interesting part of this work is how do we prove that there is some opposition, some semantic opposition here. So the desideratum, so to say, here would be to have something more in this part of the explanation, yes? Because you talked about some verbs with opposing meaning and so on and so on, but sometimes these oppositions are very deep. I mean, you need some more to reveal them, so to say. So I would recommend to add something substantial here if you are going to write something on this topic.
Yes, thank you. But this is the tricky part about it, because it's not just an opposition. It is the case that the speaker thinks that he has some situation or he has done something, and the speaker thinks that the result should be something, and this something doesn't happen.
But we have to explicate it, yes? For example, behold, I want to speak to my Lord, I am dust and ashes. Intuitively, we understand what is the contradiction, yes?
Yes.
But we need some instruments, some tools to, to explicate these oppositions. What is opposing here? It should be something in the views, in the in the framework, in the notional framework of this speech, of this worldview, so maybe.
There's some assumption of the speaker, and we have to explicate it.
Yes, I think so. Yes, because it should go beyond just the intuitive understanding of what is meant here. I think it is needed for this work. So any other remarks on this paper? If there are no remarks, I would like to thank you, all of you, for your contributions. which were very interesting and innovative. And we are going to publish the recording of this session, because not all the people who wanted to join us could do it because of these technical problems, which I'm sorry. I'm very sorry that we started later, but finally we managed to do it. So thank you very much. Hope to see you again in this session. Like it should happen, I think, a year and a half. In a year and a half, there will be another session, hoping to see it offline. Okay, thank you very much. See you later.
להתראות.
להתראות.
להתראות, כל טוב. צ'או צ'או.
Thank you.
צ'או.